So I'd love to start out talking about just what CameraIQ is and sort of how long you've been building this company and sort of how it came about, just to give some context.
Sure. Hi, thank you for having me. So I've been in the AR space for about 7 years now. I got into the medium actually as a graduate student. I was doing a dual master's in interior architecture and digital interactive art. So for me, augmented reality was a tissue between the on and offline worlds. I was really interested in how we could use it to understand our world, to connect the internet to the physical world, essentially allow them to live in the same time and space. But at the time, I was working across sometimes 7+ platforms, and that was really painful. After that, I had an AR agency called Reify, and I had the opportunity to work with brands, to do lots of really cool demos and watch how users actually use the technology. And about 2 years ago, closed that studio and launched CameraIQ. CameraIQ is the first camera experience manager. It started at Reify as a set of tools I was building for myself to be able to create, manage, and measure camera content. So today at CameraIQ, with the Camera Experience Manager, brands are able to create, manage, and measure their camera content across platforms. So publishing to Facebook, Snapchat, as well as into owned cameras, of which we power with mobile SDKs.
Great, thank you. So the focus today is sort of about fundraising journey, but we talk about all sorts of things. I think relevant to the fundraising journey is timing in the market, and you're very familiar with that. You've been at this for a while, and so you've been part of the sort of hype cycle and then, the trough. And where are we today in terms of, in your opinion, what's the fundraising temperature out there for AR and VR? And can you talk specifically about how you position yourself as a camera experience manager versus AR?
Yeah. Great question. So, the market is hotter than it was last year. I think one thing to keep in mind when you are thinking about going out to fundraise and building a company is that the preconditions for an ecosystem are in place, that the platforming around this technology is happening, but we don't yet have a full ecosystem. There isn't a flywheel. There isn't a obvious, everyday user other than pretty much putting, dog ears on our face, which is great and a really good place to start. But it's important to recognize, especially as you go out to fundraise, is not to oversell that, like, it's here right now, you're going to scale it crazy. We have a couple of years and probably more to go for it to be there. So, I think be realistic. In terms of our positioning, we don't talk to our customers ever about augmented reality. Doesn't come out of our mouth. We talk about camera content. We talk about marketing technology and how does camera content support your existing marketing campaigns. So for us, it was less about helping brands put dog ears on their face, but more about how does this technology support what they're already doing and trying to communicate to their audiences. So we looked at companies like Marketo, Buddy Media, Spreadfast, Twillo, all marketing platforms that had come about at new mediums when they were coming to market. And for us, that's been really successful.
Yeah, great. And can you talk about a little bit the brands that are involved, some of the campaigns that you've done, or anything specifically that you think the brands are doing well today in embracing this, some experience that you think is of work that they've done with you that you think is worth mentioning, and then maybe where brands are falling short, like in their vision of using this type of technology.
Yeah, so at CameraIQ, pun totally intended, we look for customers that have a CameraIQ, meaning they have probably done something in AR before. Hopefully they've done something actually on Facebook and Snapchat. Maybe they've launched a standalone application. For that reason for us is that they come to us and they're looking for something that scales. That they know and have some idea of what they are trying to accomplish in the stories that they want to tell. I think what is difficult with brands is that for a really long time they've been told, guilty, because I did have an AR agency, that these things cost $250,000 and that you couldn't update them and probably was best deployed at South by Southwest. So there's like all this residue that you're having to re-educate brands that they should be leveraging their repository of existing content. They should be using tools like Photoshop and Illustrator to create those assets right now. That 2D content set in 3D space can be incredibly compelling, and that they should really be expecting for their campaign to last a day. Like every other piece of content on the internet is relevant in the moment at a specific time, and then it's done. So I think, when we work with our customers, it's really about how can we help them quickly and efficiently get content out to their customers when it matters. I think some stuff that we've been really proud of this year is, so Coachella's one of our customers. They integrated our SDK into their mobile application and had some really amazing experiences. They also took those and put them out on Facebook and Snapchat, one of which was Disco Shark, which was pretty fun. So we really liked those guys. We have some exciting things coming out with Coach and Refinery 29 later this month that I think will be really fun, and they're all trying to think about how they use the camera to not only put their lens on the world, but extend and invite their audience to co-create with them.
That's great. And so if we can talk about, and now you've been doing this for a few years, and as you mentioned, like the cost has changed for creating this content, and your whole purpose is the platform that you've created is to sort of make that accessible to the brands to do on their own eventually, right? So can you talk about how that balance of the services work that you're doing with the brands, getting them involved, but also doing, of course, the subscription or the license to your platform, how that then you have to manage that when you're fundraising and sort of timing it all right? I mean, I know that's kind of a broad question and sort of a tricky question, but.
I'm breathing deeply because as soon as you say we are a software platform, it doesn't matter how much revenue we generate. If it is not recurring, it doesn't really matter. So that's always our challenge. I'm learning that it's a lot of discipline. It's being willing to walk away from money that's on the table that isn't going to serve the larger platform. I should preface that we are in a position to do that. We raised a pretty substantial seed round so that we could focus on building a platform. I think there's always a balance. I think one of the dirty secrets that also doesn't get aired a lot in fundraising for software companies is most software companies have a very large service component. Salesforce IPO'd with a massive service component, and it turned into Salesforce Academy, or Salesforce University, excuse me. So it's a little bit of you having to hit the right numbers. So for us going into a Series A, it's about having at least 100K at monthly recurring revenue. So.
Thank you. Yeah, and that's come up a bit, actually. And earlier, we Tipitat interviewed Maureen Fan of Baobab, and now they're a content company, so it's different. But she was talking about how she raised as much as she could in a series, I think Series B, following her Series A. She was 25 million, is that right? And anyway, her point was that, she saw that the fundraising scene was sort of like drying up a little bit, given where we were in the state of the industry. And so I guess my thought to you was I sort of, we had been talking while you were fundraising, and you were very specific about like the amount that you raised, and I know it had something to do with the valuation that you wanted as well, and the multiple. But could you talk about sort of how you determined, how many investors you had, how much you raised, it seemed very strategic. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yes. So if I'm really honest, fundraising was really, really hard until it wasn't. It was really hard in that everyone was like, oh, that's Snapchat's thing. What's going to keep Snapchat from doing that? Or why would they want to work with you guys? And then Mark Zuckerberg got on stage and he was like, guess what? We're going to be the biggest AR platform. And all of a sudden there was the potential for an ecosystem. So we actually were struggling to raise even $1 million on safes. We ultimately ended up raising 4.3 million, led by Shasta. So we were very strategic in who we were looking to have in our round. For us, Shasta has been a fantastic partner in so far as our board member, Jacob Mullins, is very involved in emerging tech. Our board observer, Doug Pepper, was the first money in Marketo, Spreadfast, Twilio, and has been on boards that have IPO'd. So for us, it was that balance of emerging tech with SaaS experience. I think one thing I will say, and that I found, and I did actually take money in on safes because we were not getting a term sheet, and this drives me mad for anyone who's in the room. If someone says, you shouldn't raise $1 million, you should raise 3. If that person isn't writing you the check, like, just tell them to go F themselves, because it's so easy to say, you should be raising more money. It's like, yeah, are you going to give it to me? No? Okay, like, I'm going to take what's on the table.
And then how did you decide if you were going to take a strategic investor? I don't believe you have any strategic investors technically, right?
We'd have one.
Oh,
so
you do?
We actually held out a small check for a strategic, and we ended up taking it from WonderCo, which is Jeffrey Katzenberg's fund. Jeffrey Katzenberg is the founder of DreamWorks. So for us, that was, it's part of also why we're in Los Angeles, is that we know our customers, their production companies, the people that are making the content that go on our platform that get in those cameras, are based in Los Angeles. So for us, that was a really important strategic, and obviously DreamWorks has always been, it's great tech, great content, so.
Cool. And this is sort of a side switch here, but I know that you have some thoughts on sort of as a female fundraising, what tips would you give, or what have you experienced that's different, or to your benefit or not to your benefit, and how can you do it better? Not that you aren't doing it well. You know what I'm saying? Like, how can you?
Yeah, no. I mean, I said before, fundraising is just hard for anyone, male or female. I think as a woman, especially if you're like, fundraising is hard, no matter what industry you are, no matter what sex you are. So, but I think for women, in my experience, it was about being over-prepared. It was about having answers to questions that they didn't really care what the answer was. They just wanted to know that I had one. It was about, I talk about it as like walking in the room and cutting them off at the knees, like not giving them a chance to even go, oh, that's a cute blonde. And like, what does she know? Oh, she was a creative technologist. I don't know if she can build software that scales. At some point, I will show my seed decks. I can, in probably a couple of years can post them. But I did a lot of analysis on the market and how I thought about what I talked about is kind of the hardware software sine wave of like the bundling and unbundling of hardware and technology. And that was important because I needed the investors to know that I was a thought leader and that I was going to be a leader in the industry. I also did a shit ton of research, I'm sorry, I have the worst mouth, on what were the playbooks that other companies had run? What were their exits? How were we like that? And then I had to work like hell to de-risk the fact that I was working in an emerging space. So, and again, that's why I make choices for our company to not talk about augmented reality, but to talk about camera content, to not talk about, to talk, I guess I should say more about software as a service, and to point to companies like Marketo or Salesforce or like more old school civil systems, like how can I really ground myself as a businesswoman, which, worked. But I think at the same time, like there's never been a better time to be a woman in venture and to be a female founder. And there's so many opportunities coming up like today and what you guys are doing. And I think it's a really good time if you have an idea and are driven, like jump up and like do it.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. So we have only a couple minutes left. So I would love to ask just kind of where you see the market going in terms of, I know you distribute your content across Facebook, Snapchat, not Instagram yet, right? Their own apps, sort of, what is the state of that industry look like to you today, and sort of what are you excited about over the next like 6 months to 12 months?
Can we say 6 to 24?
Yes, 6 to 24. Yes, great. Okay, we're already on the same page.
Yes. So yeah, I mean, it's Facebook is opening more, right? So now we're going to be seeing Instagram open, we're going to see Messenger open, and it's exciting to see them, Facebook actually being really thoughtful about what type of content go in those various cameras. So Messenger is going to be about camera commerce, about engaging with a brand in a conversation and then presenting the camera and having a conversation there. I think what is exciting is that the camera's popping up in all sorts of places we maybe wouldn't have expected, whether it's Spotify or Pinterest or Shopify has a strategy now, Twitter, WeChat, like there's all of these platforms that are doubling down. And what I think is exciting is that all of them are starting to look at the camera as more and more as a communication layer. I think we'll see more and more of them opening up APIs and taking those risks. So again, it will happen slowly, but I wouldn't be surprised if like Facebook really does start to open directly to camera in the next couple of years.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you. And do we have time for a quick question from the audience? Okay. Well, all right. Well, thank you so much, Allison. And you can follow Allison on Twitter, probably. Nope. Yep. Facebook.
Twitter, Instagram.
Some of the things. Yeah. Go to their website. All right. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.